I resist the idea of thinking in terms of the next system. And I don't at all want to devalue the importance of the kind of exercise of imagination that implies. So it's not that I think people trying to envision that big picture are not doing important work. I think it is important work. But I think that I think we need to put that work in a particular context and say that work is not so much about developing the blueprint for the thing that we're actually gonna create, but is an imaginative exercise. Eduardo Galeano has this beautiful thing about utopia. What is utopia? It is for walking. So that it's not about the blueprint that we impose, but it's about an exercise that helps inspire us, helps us orient ourselves in particular directions, helps invoke our creativity. So I think that big picture imagining is important. But we need to recognize that, unless there's some grand revolution where some vanguard takes over the state and then imposes whatever this system is on us, transformation is probably not really going to happen that way. And I don't really want transformation to happen in that vanguard imposition way either. So I think we're trying to imagine what does bottom-up, radically democratic transformation look like. And it probably doesn't look like the kind of implementing out of whole cloth of a system that somebody's figured out. It's also the case that there's no individual capable of imagining at that scale. And it's also, so if we're looking at things from a diverse economies perspective and we're realizing that we are already organizing ourselves in ways that are post-capitalist. The post and post-capitalist isn't a time thing. It's not what comes after the capitalist system. It's the post is already present in our midst, right? So we're already building these things. We're already experimenting with these things. We're already learning how to live in post-capitalist ways. So the work of imagining the sort of big picture, if it's going to happen, it's got to happen in conversation with the people who are doing it now, right? We've got this incredible creativity and wisdom that's bubbling up. I mean, if you go to a conference of the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives, to me, that's one of the most incredible spaces of inspiring creativity that I've ever been present at, where you've got all of these people who are troubleshooting, the incredible challenging complexities and details of what it means to actually live and work non-capitalism and live and work cooperation, and constantly coming up with brilliant new ideas and sharing these new ideas and tweaking these new ideas and throwing out the ones that don't work. And so there's an incredible learning process that's already happening. Our visions need to be deeply informed by that learning, rather than sort of assuming, oh, we don't know what post-capitalism is going to be like until after the revolution, right? So I think for me, it's less about what's our big blueprint for where we're going to go, and more about what's our process of kind of evolutionary transformation. And call it revolutionary transformation too, but I'm not thinking in terms of the revolution that's going to overthrow the system and then we have our new one, but more about an ongoing process of revolutionary action that's changing lives and communities. I don't know how change ultimately happens, and I don't know that anyone does. On some level, I don't trust anyone who thinks they do. That sounds like fundamentalism to me. To me, it's about experimentation. It's about learning from the past, and it's also about paying close attention to what's happening at this moment, to what possibilities are opening up. So whatever is going to emerge after capitalism has to emerge from a grassroots process of learning and collective transformation. It has to emerge from communities of people experimenting with developing new forms of collective power, new forms of livelihood provisioning, and building that from the bottom up. It's going to look different in different places with different communities. Nobody can appropriately impose that on another group of people, though we can learn a lot from each other. And along the way, there's this crucial question about whose work and whose vision is actually included and validated in that mission, right? There's a whole critique of economic alternatives, certainly in some parts of the world, as being things that are really for middle-class white folks. And in some communities, that's very true, and that's an image that people have. But we have to recognize that this work is happening in all communities, and it's been happening in all communities as a matter of fundamental survival forever, really. So work like that of Jessica Gordon-Nembhard, who wrote Collective Courage, showing us in really powerful and moving ways how African American communities have built their practices of life and resistance on forms of cooperation, forms of non-capitalism, and showing us that this is deeply part of an ongoing historical process of liberation, and it has been, and all of us have a ton to learn from that. And those communities are pioneers in this work, that in many ways it's a matter of those of us who want to be allies figuring out how to join that work, how to be allies to that work, how to link that work to ours in ways that is actively combating white supremacy in our movements. So an ongoing question about how, when we're building from the bottom up, we really make sure that what we're building is something that is for everyone, that we're actually building something that's truly liberatory, that's resisting the forms of exclusion that have left people out, whether left people out of the story or left people out of the actual material practice. But for me, it's ultimately about organizing and experimenting. I mean, I think if anything, politically, I come out of an anarchist tradition, I think, and I'm inspired by many anarchist ideas and forms of organizing. But I think actually I'm an experimentalist. And in part because I don't know the answer, and I don't want to know the answer too quickly. And we've got to all learn together. We've got to figure it out. And that's really what research is to me. That's what good academic research could and should be, is academics, researchers accompanying movements that are actively experimenting, and us using our scholarship, tools of theory to help reflect on those practices of experimentation, to help amplify those practices, and to add just another generative thread of creativity to that work that's already happening.